I was never the girl who got picked. In classrooms filled with eager faces and bright futures, my name barely registered. I learned early that being the quiet one meant I was safe, but invisible. The friend who smiled from the sidelines, the colleague whose hand stayed raised until you'd asked everyone else. My hair wasn't the brightest, my laughter not the loudest. People would remember my joke only after they'd laughed, my suggestion only after they'd nodded and moved on. By the time I realized I craved attention, I'd already grown comfortable in the corners. At university, my roommates dazzled the lecture halls with their confidence. They argued passionately, they networked effortlessly, they charmed professors into letters of recommendation. I sat back, taking notes, offering edits to their papers, making sure their arguments were airtight. I thought that was enough, until I noticed the slow burn of envy twisting in my chest. I was talented, organized, reliable, and completely replaceable. Early in my career, I joined a small branding agency in Paris, hoping to find my voice. The loft office was a haze of exposed brick, vintage posters, and aromatic coffee. The creative team moved like a flock of birds, swirling between desks, brainstorming slogans, pitching ideas. I arrived before dawn and stayed after dusk, polishing slides and proofreading decks. I carried the weight of their deadlines like a badge of honor, certain that one day my name would shine alongside theirs. But the days slipped by in repetitive loops. Wake, work, eat, sleep, repeat. Ideas I suggested were rebranded as team concepts. A catchy tagline I crafted was softened by senior strategists. I clung to the hope that patience would pay off, that the day would come when someone would look at me and see me. Instead, I remained the dependable one, the quiet genius unsung. My detachment became a shield. I stopped raising my hand in meetings. I stopped joining after-hours drinks. When colleagues gathered to celebrate wins, I hung back, holding a modest smile. If someone asked how I was, I'd say good and mean it. The alternative, revealing my ache, my longing, felt too raw. Then came the leadership forum in Paris. I was sent as a last-minute replacement, the understudy stepping into the limelight for one night only. I arrived early, tucked into the back row, notebook open, heart pounding. The keynote stage gleamed under soft lights, a wooden podium center stage. When the speaker introduced himself as Julian Marchand, industry titan, visionary strategist, I braced for another round of polished rhetoric. Instead, he spoke with a calm authority that made the room hush. He shared stories of brands rebuilt from grief, of audiences moved by honesty, of campaigns that thrived on authenticity rather than gimmicks. Words rolled out like a warm breeze, and I felt myself lean in. When the Q&A opened, I surprised myself by raising my hand. The microphone was passed to me, and I asked about balancing data-driven decisions with emotional storytelling. My voice wavered, but he smiled and invited me to elaborate. He listened as I described the need for human connection in a world drowning in statistics. His nod was patient, almost reverent. That moment, his focused attention ignited something in me, the flicker of a spotlight, the unaccustomed but thrilling. Afterward, attendees swarmed the stage, but he looked past them and asked if I'd join him for coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, and dinner into a walk along the Seine beneath the glow of street lamps. He remembered the name of my childhood cat, the way I liked my espresso, the campus I'd attended. I realized I was no longer just a face in the crowd. I was someone who mattered. In the weeks that followed, I felt myself bloom. I replied to emails with wit. I offered new concepts in meetings. To my surprise, they stuck. Senior partners paused to ask my opinion. My inbox filled with invitations to collaborate. I stood taller, spoke louder, laughed more freely. The corner I'd inhabited for so long felt vast and inviting, yet even as I basked in newfound confidence, a tremor of doubt lingered. I'd spent years preparing for this moment, only to wonder if it was real or just a fleeting dream. But he assured me it was real. By then, his messages arrived on my phone with eager anticipation. Can't wait to see you. Your insight in today's meeting was brilliant. I value your perspective. Words that I'd craved my entire life. It wasn't arrogance, it was awakening. For once, I wasn't the understudy. I was the protagonist. And when someone holds you in their gaze, when they choose your voice over dozens of others, you learn to believe it. I told myself, at last, I've been found. He was everything I thought I didn't deserve. Julian was the kind of man people described with reverence, polished but not pretentious, witty without trying too hard. His presence didn't demand attention, it invited it. In rooms full of ambition and ego, he was the calm in the center. People listened when he spoke, not out of obligation, but out of trust. And somehow, he chose me. It started gently. A text in the morning, "Hope your meeting goes well today." A message late at night, "Still thinking about your idea on narrative strategy? Let's discuss tomorrow." In between, moments that made me feel like I was living someone else's life. He'd drop by with lunch, just because he remembered I was too busy to step out. He'd recommend books I'd mentioned once in passing. He'd tilt his head when I spoke, like every word I said mattered. At first, I thought it was mentorship. Then friendship. Then something more. I kept waiting for the catch, the hidden motive. The moment he'd turn around and say, "Just kidding, you're not what I thought." But that moment never came. Instead, there were long conversations about life, careers, regrets. He told me about his childhood in Marseille, his failed startup at 22, the one time he almost moved to Tokyo for love. He asked me about my family, my fears, my dreams I hadn't dared to name. With Julian, I felt seen in a way I didn't know I'd been longing for. He called me brilliant. Not just smart or competent, but brilliant. He'd lean in after meetings, say, "The room shifts when you talk. I hope you know that." And for the first time, I started to believe I might be more than just dependable. There was a night, I remember it clearly, when we stayed late at the office. Everyone else had gone home. A storm rolled in, thunder rumbling softly outside the tall windows. He poured us both a glass of wine from a bottle someone had gifted the agency. We sat on opposite ends of the conference table, tired, quiet, laughing about something trivial. And then, in a pause between jokes, he said, "I think you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met." I froze. That sentence shouldn't have belonged to me. Not the girl who never got picked. Not the one who always faded into the background. I wanted to ask if he meant it, but something in his eyes told me he did. And instead of doubting, I simply let the words settle over me like warmth. The first time we kissed was not dramatic. No fireworks, no music. Just a quiet moment in the office kitchen, the scent of coffee lingering in the air, the hum of the refrigerator behind us. I turned to say something forgettable, and his hand found mine. It was clumsy and sweet and real. We didn't talk about it afterward. We didn't need to. Soon after, we started seeing each other outside work. Quiet dinners, walks through Montmartre, mornings where he'd bring coffee to my doorstep. He never made grand gestures. He didn't have to. He made me feel like I was finally chosen. And for a girl who had spent her life unnoticed, that feeling was intoxicating. But with that came fear. A fear I couldn't name. That I was building something fragile. That one wrong move could shatter it all. I started dressing more carefully, measuring my words, laughing at the right moments. I told myself I was just trying to be my best self, but deep down, I was afraid that being myself wouldn't be enough. Still, he never pulled away. He spoke of the future like I'd be in it, if we ever moved abroad, if we ever ran our own agency, when we take that trip to Greece. I clung to those ifs like lifelines. Not promises exactly, but possibilities. And for someone like me, possibilities were enough. One evening, we were walking along the Seine, the sky soft with twilight. He stopped near the Pont Neuf, looked at me like he was memorizing my face, and said, "I used to think I knew exactly what I wanted in life. And then I met you." I laughed, unsure how to respond. He didn't let go of my hand the entire walk home. I began to wonder what love was supposed to feel like, because this quiet, unwavering presence, it felt like home. I didn't care if it was fast or if people would judge. I didn't care if I wasn't the most beautiful woman or the most exciting. He made me feel like I was enough, more than enough. Still, I tried not to hope too hard. Happiness for me had always come in small, careful doses. I never believed in forever. But with Julian, I started to want it. The morning he proposed wasn't a grand affair. There were no violinists or surprise trips to Venice, no friends hiding behind trees with camera phones ready to catch the moment. It was just us, in the tiny sunlit kitchen of my apartment, with the scent of fresh toast in the air and the kettle just beginning to hiss. Julian had come over early, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he picked up from a street vendor downstairs. He wasn't the kind of man who did roses. He said they were too predictable. He liked beauty in things that weren't trying too hard. We were sitting at my little table, talking about nothing. Something about a documentary he wanted us to watch that night. Something about the neighbor's cat getting stuck in the stairwell again. And then, out of nowhere, he stood up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of me. I thought he dropped something. But then he looked up, his face suddenly very serious, very soft, and he pulled out a small box. It wasn't velvet. It wasn't pristine. It looked like he'd carried it around for weeks, unsure of the moment. "I don't have a speech," he said, "because you already know all the reasons. You're the one I want to build a life with. Even on our worst days, I'd still choose you. So, will you marry me?" I didn't cry. I know that's what most women say they do. Burst into tears, hands to their mouths, overwhelmed by joy. But I just stared at him, and then slowly I nodded, like I was answering a question I had already known the answer to for months. "Yes," I said. "Of course, yes." He slipped the ring on my finger. It was simple, an oval stone on a delicate gold band, elegant, quiet, like the life we had built together. The months that followed felt like something out of someone else's story. People started seeing me differently. I wasn't just the dependable girl in the background anymore. I was Julian's fiancée. His friends, many of whom had barely noticed me before, now made efforts. Dinners were planned, messages sent, smiles extended in places where there used to be polite indifference. My parents were surprised. Not because I was marrying him, though that too, but because I was marrying at all. They had long since resigned themselves to the idea that I'd be the independent daughter, the one who focused on work and stability. My mother cried on the phone, and my father said, "I'm proud of you," in the kind of voice that made me want to sit down. Julian didn't want a big wedding. Neither did I. We agreed on something intimate, a small ceremony by the lake near his family's house, with just enough people to fill 2 long tables at dinner. I found a dress that didn't scream bride, but whispered belonging. He wore a navy suit that brought out the silver in his eyes. We wrote our own vows. Mine were shaky, his were steady. We kissed as the sun dipped low, and someone in the back called out, "Finally!" There's a picture from that day I still think about. It's of us, not looking at the camera, but at each other. My head is tilted slightly, his hand is on my waist, and we look happy. Really, genuinely happy. But looking back now, I wonder, was that the peak? In the beginning, marriage was an extension of everything we had. Comfortable, familiar, safe. We moved into a bigger apartment, started planning trips, bought matching coffee mugs, joked about baby names. Julian's career was on the rise. He just closed a major campaign, and people were starting to mention his name in the kinds of conversations that changed futures. Mine was steady, predictable. I liked it that way. There was a rhythm to us, a quiet partnership. He made the coffee. I made the lists. He brought the spark. I kept the flame. We didn't fight, not really. Just small silences that stretched a bit longer than they used to. Missed calls. Forgotten details. He was busy. I understood. And when I didn't understand, I forgave. There was a night, I can't forget it, when he came home late, jacket damp from the rain, eyes distant. He kissed my cheek like he always did, but it felt automated. I asked how his day was, and he said, "Fine," then disappeared into the shower. I stared at the pasta I'd made, getting cold on the stove. The bottle of wine we'd opened last weekend, still half full, and I thought, maybe this is what happens. Maybe this is marriage. Maybe love, once fully realized, settles into something more muted, something practical. But part of me missed the spark, the little surprises, the head tilt when I spoke, the texts that said, "Just thinking of you." I told myself we were just evolving, shifting into the next phase, that it was normal. Still late at night, when he'd fall asleep beside me, I'd lie awake and listen to the sound of his breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of me or someone else. The first few weeks afterward felt soft, like walking barefoot on warm wood floors. I moved in completely. Our routines meshed like waves folding into each other. Then one morning, over coffee, he said something that made me pause. "You don't need to work anymore, you know?" I looked up from my laptop, surprised. "What?" "I mean it." He gave me that calm, collected look of his. "I make more than enough. You're always so tired. You should take time. Do the things you love. Live slower. Let me take care of you." There was something so gentle about the way he said it, like an offering, like love. But it lingered. I loved my job. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me purpose, identity, a rhythm that felt mine. Still, his voice was reassuring. You've worked so hard for so long. Maybe this is the season where you don't have to. And that word season made it feel temporary, safe. So I thought about it. I didn't say yes, not right away. But the seed was planted, and I told myself, if the roles were reversed, I would have done the same for him. Maybe love was also about allowing someone to protect you, even if you didn't think you needed it. A few weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, we were walking home from brunch when he brought it up again. I've been thinking, he said casually, I should probably get life insurance. Yeah, I nodded, distracted by a flower stand across the street. That's probably a smart idea. He stopped walking. I actually already did, he said, for both of us. I took one out in your name too. I blinked. You what? He smiled. It's just precaution, in case something ever happens. It's normal for married couples. My stomach fluttered, but not in the good way. Why? In my name? He shrugged. Because I'd want to make sure you're taken care of. And well, since we're legally married, I'm the natural beneficiary. It's just easier. I nodded slowly. He took my hand again. Hey, it's not a big deal. It's not like I think something will happen. It's just responsible, grown-up stuff. That night, he showed me the paperwork, neatly filed, all above board, a modest sum, nothing outrageous, enough to pay off the apartment maybe, cover some expenses. I didn't protest. I signed where he asked me to sign. After all, he was my husband, and husbands don't plan things like that unless they care, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Even when I noticed the slight shift in tone when I asked questions. Even when he started traveling more, staying late more, forgetting our Sunday rituals. Even when I found a second phone in the drawer beneath his socks, a phone that didn't have my number in it but had someone else's saved under a heart emoji. Even then, I told myself, he loves me. He's just tired, stretched thin. Marriage is hard sometimes, but I couldn't unsee it. And once you see something, really see it, it changes everything.